The old Willow Creek Library had always felt a little strange to Ellie Parker. The tall oak shelves, the scent of worn paper, the ancient grandfather clock that ticked away the quiet afternoons, it was like stepping into another world. But last October, something happened that even Ellie couldn't explain away. It began when the librarian, Mrs. Whitmore, told Ellie about the vanishing book. "It's the oddest thing," Mrs. Whitmore said, adjusting her glasses. "A rare book called The Hollow Raven keeps disappearing from the shelf, and then turning back up in a different spot, sometimes days later. Most people would think it was just forgetful readers or lazy shelving. But Ellie knew Mrs. Whitmore. She was sharp as a tack and twice as organized. Something else was going on. That afternoon, Ellie sat cross-legged between the mystery shelves, a notebook balanced on her knee. She watched the tall clock strike 3, the sun filtering through the stained glass windows, and waited. At 3:17 p.m., something flickered in the corner of her eye, a dark shape moving between the aisles. It wasn't Mrs. Whitmore. It wasn't another kid. It was a tall, thin shadow, gliding noiselessly toward the back of the library. Ellie crept after it, heart pounding. The shadow stopped at shelf 13, the very shelf where the Hollow Raven belonged, and just as she reached the end of the aisle, the shadow vanished. But the book was gone. The next morning, Ellie returned early. The book had reappeared, this time on a completely different shelf, one labeled Local Legends. That's when Ellie spotted something else. Tucked inside the pages was a note, written in shaky, old-fashioned handwriting. "Find the hidden key before the clock strikes 12. That night, with a flashlight and a backpack of supplies, Ellie returned to the library during the annual Halloween lock-in, where kids were allowed to stay overnight, play games, and read. But Ellie had other plans. The clock ticked closer to midnight as Ellie searched, following a series of clues hidden inside other old books. Each one pointed her closer to the grandfather clock. At 11:58 p.m., Ellie reached behind the clock's heavy wooden casing and her fingers closed around something cold and metallic. A key. The clock chimed midnight as she pulled it free. And behind the clock, a hidden compartment creaked open, revealing an old, dust-covered journal. Inside were the writings of a librarian from 1923, who claimed to have hidden a priceless family heirloom in the library, locking it away with the key Ellie now held. But the journal ended with one final chilling note: "Beware the shadow. It guards what is hidden." Ellie closed the journal, her spine tingling. The mystery wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ellie couldn't stop thinking about the journal. Long after the lock-in had ended, the words haunted her: "Beware the shadow. It guards what is hidden." The library felt different now, like something was watching her, waiting. But Ellie wasn't the kind of girl to back down from a mystery, especially one this strange. The next Saturday, Ellie returned to the library alone, the cold iron key in her pocket, and the old journal tucked in her backpack. Mrs. Whitmore greeted her, but Ellie could tell the librarian felt the tension too. The shadow hadn't been seen since Halloween, but the air in the library was heavy with something unseen. Ellie stood before the grandfather clock, studying it in the daylight. There had to be more. The journal's last pages hinted at a secret room, somewhere the heirloom was still hidden. Late in the afternoon, the library grew quiet. Ellie inserted the key into the small hidden compartment behind the clock, and with a soft click, a second panel opened, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Her heart pounded, but she switched on her flashlight and crept inside. The steps led to an old stone cellar beneath the library. Dust coated the floor, and the air smelled of forgotten time. At the far end of the room stood an old wooden chest, its lock rusted but still intact. But as she stepped forward, the air grew colder, and out of the corner of her eye, she saw it, the shadow. The shadow hovered near the chest, shifting and pulsing like a living shadow. Ellie froze. The room seemed to hold its breath. But then, she remembered the journal's other notes. The shadow wasn't evil. It was guarding the heirloom. She slowly lifted the journal, and spoke aloud the name written inside the front cover: Eleanor Whitmore. The shadow paused. Slowly, it drifted back, revealing the chest. Eleanor Whitmore, as it turned out, was the great-grandmother of Mrs. Whitmore, the librarian. The shadow had been protecting her lost heirloom all along. Ellie opened the chest. Inside lay a velvet pouch containing a delicate silver pendant, shaped like a raven with tiny black gemstone eyes, and a letter, perfectly preserved despite the years. The letter explained everything. Eleanor Whitmore had hidden the pendant during a time of hardship, promising her family would one day find it. But when she passed, the secret was lost, until Ellie solved the mystery. When Ellie emerged from the cellar, Mrs. Whitmore listened to the whole story, tears welling in her eyes. The shadow, once feared, was gone. Freed from its duty, it had simply vanished, but the pendant, now safe and gleaming, was finally back where it belonged. Ellie added one last note to her detective journal that night. Not all mysteries are about catching bad guys. Some are about setting things right. And with the case of the shadow in the library solved, she closed her notebook, ready for whatever mystery came next.